Welcome to Mondays with Tara André. We're going to start in just a minute for a fun discussion on being polyamorous.
All right.
Good morning, Andre.
Good morning, Tara.
Welcome everyone to Mondays with Tara and Andre. So today's topic is on being polyamorous. Thoughts on our 6-year journey.
Wow, it's 6 years, huh?
6 years, getting close to that, 7-year itch, as you call it. Awesome. So today we're doing something a little bit different, more of an informal chat, and we're doing a Q&A as well. So if you have any questions you want to ask us about us, our relationship, about yours, just drop them in the comments. We actually had a forum this week and we had a couple questions come in, so we'll answer those. So just a note, if you're new to joining us and you haven't watched us before, if you want us to see your name when you're commenting, you have to give StreamYard permission. So StreamYard.com/Facebook.
If they want to see their name.
If you want us to see your name. Otherwise, we'll see it when we finish the broadcast.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think about this weekend. We were at an event, and there were 5 or 6 couples there. And it's interesting, the spectrum of people who want to be announced, who actually are practitioners in this and go so far as to want to, destigmatize it, normalize it, do whatever. And then those people who are, I'm a total mess today. I mean, I don't know, kind of as if we weren't even ready for this. But anyway, I like what's going on with the hair. It's a big mess.
Just leave it.
But anyway, so it's just interesting to see how some people, and there's no judgment to it. It's just an observation of how it runs the spectrum from people who are very much out and want to be kind of, polyamorous activists, and to those people who are really not wanting to have it announced or be known outside of the immediate circle of what they're participating in.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the different dynamics.
Yeah, so if anyone has thoughts on that, let us know in the comments. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, you can come in as anonymous. You can come out as, your full name, social security number, and all that good stuff.
So for those of you, if anyone's joining us for the first time, I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I am a relationship and awesomeness coach, and I specialize in working with people who are non-monogamous.
And I'm Andre Turcotte. I'm a sex-positive psychotherapist.
Yeah, so we are co-founders of the online community Let's Talk Polyamory, which is in the name there. And we have 2 programs, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery, and our new program, Poly Newbies, which starts next week. We're super excited about that. So every week we come live in the group with a training, or today an informal talk about being polyamorous.
Thinking back to the Poly Newbies, so it's interesting, as we were saying this, I'm wondering the approach, how it is different for people depending on where they're coming from, and specifically with their age. So many people today, many youngsters today are, I guess it's more readily accepted or more commonplace for people to be in E&M relationships, ethically non-monogamous relationships. And back in the day when I was your age, there wasn't this same platform, and it wasn't as readily open or accepted or spoken about. And it's interesting to see the newbies who might be a little bit older, how they're coming to their relationship of opening it up, as opposed to it being just, a matter of fact, viable way that you've grown up with. So it's interesting to compare the two, and we'll see who's in that group and how their experiences may have been different. And interesting for those people who might have grown up always having access to it, to imagine what it might be like to not have access to it. So it's like today, women's rights, gay rights, all those things, we might kind of come to accept them, not really fully appreciating where they came from, but that we shouldn't take it for granted, but that we might also stop and consider, what would it be like if I didn't have access to this? But I think that's why it's so important for us to speak openly about these things, because we want to make them acceptable, make them normalized, make them part of our life.
Well,
I think the caffeine's kicking in.
Is the caffeine kicking in?
No, but it's a good point. I don't want, we should never really just take for granted the things that we have, assuming that they're always going to be there or that they have always been there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, the reason we put together this course was to support people who are thinking about, are curious about being non-monogamous or opening up an existing relationship. And so I'm guessing that's why you got into the discussion about people who are closer to our age, maybe, that might be exploring this for the first time and have grown up with the idea that it's not something that's available to them. It's not an option. Is that why?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why. But also, the consideration of, wow, what would it be like to be? Because I haven't been there, but imagine if I was in a 20 or 30-year marriage and then wanting to open it up.
Yeah, it's a really different situation.
It sure is.
So that's why we put together this course. So all the information is on the website. So we're starting next week. So what's cool about this round is it's the first time that we're going to be delivering the course materials. So it's going to be all done live and recorded and put into our Poly Newbies course site, along with all the exercises and the training and the extra resources and stuff like that. So it's a real benefit to join us this first round starting September 18th. But the good part is it is recorded. So if you can't attend live, it's all there for you. And of course, because it's the first time, it's a special price.
But so, chock full of nuts. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Chock full of nuts. And it's for people who are new to opening up a relationship. And we called it Poly Newbies. I just want to clarify that even if you're don't identify as polyamorous, it was just used it as an overarching term. So if you want to just be consensually non-monogamous or trying to figure out what style is right for you, that's actually one of the modules. So just a clarification. So Poly Newbies, yay. I'm so excited. I think it's going to be awesome. And then we also have our deeper dive program, our open relationship and polyamory mastery. If you've been doing it for a while and want a little more coaching support from us and that sort of thing. So if you have any questions, just send us a note and that sort of thing. So let's jump in. So we thought we'd do more of an informal chat. So we put a list of just some topics we wanted to talk about because we were chatting after we went to an event with some friends about what we wanted to talk about. And so a couple things came up. So one of the things that came up was what it's like to be polyamorous but not married. Right.
And it's interesting because, again, at that event, there was a couple there that we've known for a little while. And they were younger, I guess you'd say, in the demographics in the spectrum. They were kind of younger, but they announced to the group that they got engaged, that they're going to get married. So immediately I wondered, well, and I asked them while in the group if they imagined that their relationship might change at all once they kind of cross over that threshold. Maybe there's no reason for it to change, or maybe it will change things. It's interesting to consider.
Yeah. And do you remember what they said?
Tell me.
They said they didn't imagine it would change at all. Right. So they identify, I think, more as lifestyle. They do things together, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think that's right. So they might have emotionally kind of like a closed relationship where they see each other consistently and feel those great deep bonds with each other and might want to kind of celebrate it in a marriage. But they express their interactions with other people through swinging events, through lifestyle events like ours. And they seem rather fluid in it. And we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, interesting. Super excited for them. So then maybe that's a good segue into how our relationship has changed over time. So now it's been 6 years. Can you believe it's been 6 years? We joke that. Can I say what your joke is?
Let's hear it.
People about the 7-year itch joke.
Oh, that's no joke.
So is anybody else past the 7-year mark? I'd love to hear in the comments where people are.
But it's interesting because we're at another thing that was happening, and I had expressed my fear, fantasy, concern about the 7-year mark, and they've been in a relationship for a while. And she said to me, she goes, "Well, you don't have to worry about the 7-year itch because you are participating in it every time you go out and meet somebody, right? So the 7-year itch is I've been with somebody for a while and I might have longings or desires or fantasies to be with somebody else. But being in an open relationship, I can still be with you and go out and have that expression with other people, have those interactions, have those things. And maybe it will feel less daunting, less of almost like a burden if I'm to remain with one person and not have those things. So maybe,
exactly.
Yeah. So maybe polyamory, being open relating, is the antidote to the 7-year itch.
Yeah. You did announce though that maybe we should break up for a couple of months just to like break the pattern. Or the other option you offered was like, just say it's like been 6 years plus. It's been over 6 years.
So we stopped the counter essentially in our mind. Yeah. But I think also for me that we could have somehow made it to 6 years because in the beginning or with my past relationships, I was historically, I feel kind of concerned that I might, number one, get bored of the relationship, but also that I might have to be the other person's everything for such a long time. And how was I going to fulfill that obligation, their estimation, even if they didn't consciously imagine I was going to be their everything? The history, the narrative was, well, I was going to be the knight in shining armor, right? We were going to live forever and ever together and happily ever after and all that stuff. And that seemed to be a lot of pressure, a lot of things to step up to. Whereas being in a relationship like this, it says, well, no, I don't have expectations that you're going to be my one and only forever and ever. I mean, we might display that in some ways by being together, but it doesn't mean that there's that same expectation. I think for me, it was really making it easier to be more of a participant and feel less avoidant or anxious in the relationship.
I think what's different for me is like I was in a relationship before that, surprisingly ended at just for 7 years when he decided that he just didn't love me anymore, which was interesting. But I think, prior to that, when I didn't know that that was the situation, if someone had asked me about my relationship and how I felt, I used to use the descriptor that I was content. And content is awesome. But is that long standing? And at the time I was quite upset that it broke up, but honestly, like what would it been like to be just content? We fell into a bit of a rhythm of regularity. And, there was stuff going on with his kids and that sort of thing. So that, there was the daily life stuff, but was I going to be happy in the long term had it not ended? And it's interesting to think back how devastated I was, but I'm actually glad because I don't think I want to live a life that I'm just content. Like I feel with you, our relationship still is interesting and dynamic and changes and like we still get excited for each other and, that proven by this weekend,
Yeah. Content sounds to me to be almost good enough, but then it begs the question, could it be better? Should it be fantastic? Could we have that expectation that it could be exciting?
Yeah, why not have that expectation? I want to have that expectation. Like, yeah. I mean, there's always things, that are regular and become routine in a relationship, especially if you're with someone long term, but why can't it still be thrilling and exciting? Like you always say to me, and I love this, is that, our relationship is so fun. We always, you said, oh, that was a fun weekend. And then you said to me, well, we always have fun. And it's true. But,
it's interesting to talk about the routine because last night, or this morning, whenever it was, I was coming to bed, right? And I thought, well, I'm always coming in when we're at my place. I always come in from the left-hand side. What if I came in from the right-hand side? And it was something as small and easy as that. The observation that I might be tempted or tend to fall into routine, like most of us do. I guess it's rather common. That's why we have a word for it called routine. But could we look at that, acknowledge it, and then resist going to that and find some way of inventing something new, inviting something new, exploring something new, offering something new?
Yeah, keeping it exciting and interesting. And that's one of the things we talk about too, in both of our courses actually, is how do you stay connected? How do you keep it interesting and exciting? And that, it can be simple things that you do. It can be making little adventures. Like I know we went out, what day was it? It was one of the hot days. It finally cooled off in the evening and we took off and went on bikes in the city. And it was so much fun. It was like a little mini adventure. And it's like that injection of fun in that I think keeps it exciting and interesting. So, well,
that being said then, so I wonder if you could have, I almost said mediocre, if you took your previous relationship where you were content, could you have utilized some of these things and made it more than just content? Could it have been exciting? Could you go back now into that relationship and utilize the things that you've learned through what we've discovered, through what we've researched, through what we've developed? Could you then be able to utilize that and affect a more satisfying, more interesting relationship?
Yeah, with that knowledge, probably. Yeah. I mean, we had little adventures too, but they were probably more spaced out. And we did get sort of wrapped up in the everyday and working and that sort of thing. Like there was a lot of distractions. And I think that's a good reminder to me because I tend to probably work a lot, and is to remember to take a break and prioritize the relationship. Like sometimes you just say to me, just take a break. Let's do something fun. And it's a good reminder because I think it gives you energy in yourself and in the relationship. So I wanted you mentioned about when we're here at your place. So our living situation is unique, I think. And people they were asking about it at the event we went to. People were asking us about it. And this whole idea of, are we common law?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, right. So we're talking to somebody there has a great knowledge of taxation and implications. And we're living currently in 2 different cities, but also in 2 different provinces. Which, for those of you who don't know a province, it's much like a big state or kind of states combined. But anyway, so there are different taxations there. Taxation? Yeah. And one of them, he was saying, was that, well, in the one province, if you are cohabitating for an extended period of time, then you might be considered unbroken. It might be considered then to be common law. And in the other province, maybe those same rules don't apply. But what I found most interesting is that you and I, say, are going out, and for whatever reason we decide, or we have to, or we find our way that we are living together, and maybe are enjoying each other's company enough, and we live together for whatever reason or reasons. But we're not necessarily wanting to advance the relationship. We're not necessarily wanting to get on the relationship escalator. We're going out, all of a sudden we're going steady, then we move in together, then we get engaged, we get married. Maybe we don't want to get engaged or get married. Maybe we just enjoy cohabitating. Maybe one day we will, but maybe we don't want to feel as though we're being pushed to it. But the taxation in that one province says, well, if you've been together by this amount of time, the clock starts, and now we will assume that you are common law married. But wait a second. I didn't say I wanted to get married. I didn't say that I subscribe to those beliefs. I'm not monogamous. In fact, I have other partners, and sometimes I might hang with them or not, whether I live formally with them or not. But why should the state or government then say, well, for taxation reasons, you will be considered this way, when emotionally it's not asking us, well, how do you feel about each other? Is it something you're wanting to do? Yeah,
it's a little different than roommates. So one person's like, well, if they ever if you said, like, we have the same address on our taxation, and like, well, then they might just say you're common law, and there might be benefits to that. But I'm like, I don't want to be called that. Well, why can't we just be living in the same place? They said, well, if they came and there was one bed, then they might say that, oh, then you're common law. Anyways, this is an interesting conversation. But choosing to live together is an interesting.
So it reminds me, though, when I was living in New York, my second wife, when I met her, she had just come from Europe and was living with 2 people that she knew back in Poland, and one of them, the room that she shared, was with her friend. He was not necessarily interested in her, but they were in the same bedroom, sharing the same bed. Well, they weren't coupled in any way, but they were definitely roommates. But they would have seen one bed and assumed that they were coupled, and neither one of them would have liked that so much. Anyway, it's interesting.
But for us, we choose, part of our being polyamorous, and what works for us is that we have 2 separate places to live, and sometimes we live together and sometimes we don't, and that's something that works for us. But that doesn't have to be your situation. You can be polyamorous and live together. You can be in an open relationship and not live together. Like, there's so many different options. It's just knowing what it is that you want. I think that's part of the key to success, is knowing what works for you and figuring that out.
Right, or working within the parameters of what you have to make it work for you.
So the other thing I think is interesting to reflect on is, like, the whole dating others, and the and also the style of non-monogamy. And there's many different styles. We talked about it before. I think for me, I have a multi-personality identity in terms of being consensually non-monogamous. So I think at times I feel like we're more like swingers. I feel like a swinger. I want to get engaged in more go to events and parties and that. But I do identify, I think at my core, I feel that I'm polyamorous, and that I enjoy having multiple emotional and sexual connections with people. So I don't think you have to be one thing. I mean, that's one thing I think I discovered over the last 6 years, is that we don't have to be one thing, as long as everybody's consenting to the relationship. Is that what you were going to say? You reading my mind?
Yeah, it made me, as you say, I don't have to subscribe to one thing, very much made me think about consent. And in our argument that we were talking about not long ago, about the ability or inability in Canada to grant future consent. So they say that you are not able to grant future consent, that consent has to be done in the moment, right? So I couldn't say, well, it's okay to do this thing in the future. For example, I might say, well, I would like you to go ahead and have your pleasures with me, even if I'm sleeping. And apparently you're not able to do that. But the real reason why I bring up the consent is because it's supposed to be in the moment. So if I am to say, well, I am this, that, or the other thing, I'm a swinger, or I'm polyamorous, or I'm a relationship anarchist, maybe I'm those things at times, but maybe I'm not always those things, or want to have a preference to those things. Maybe it is in the moment. So, and some moments, depending on who I'm with, maybe I will be more of an emotionally connected person, or other times I might be more anonymous and go to things kind of, friends with benefit, or no strings attached kind of thing. Yeah, what?
You're cute. That's all.
Okay.
So one of the things we thought we were talking about when we were talking about this the other day, what we talked about is jealousy, and how that also can fluctuate over time.
Yeah.
Like I could say that the one thing I've learned over the 6 years is how to adapt, like how to address jealousy or feelings of insecurity with myself. And I think when we first started, certainly those feelings were more intense, more involved. There was a lot more of that, am I good enough? Is someone going to be better? Is he going to choose someone else? And I think now it's more, there's a shorter recovery time. Like I may experience those things, but I can recover from them much quicker. Like I have other stories that are in our head. But it's interesting that it can surprise you sometimes. And I think recently we had some of that come up.
Yeah. Even me as this great supposed sexpert, I also got some jealousy. And I mean, I've worked through the program. I've worked through all these steps. I'm intellectually aware of it. And yet the emotion came up. The feeling still came up. But what's good, though, also is that having walked through the jealousy, you know that this too shall pass. In the moment, it feels perhaps overwhelming. But when you can allow yourself a bit of time, understanding, compassion to have these feelings, you might then also begin to look at it without the harsh judgment. You might just simply say, well, what's at play here? What am I really feeling? What is triggering these feelings? And then have a better understanding of it and be able to come to terms with yourself and talk about it with your partner or partners and say, well, I'm feeling this, and what do you think about that? And it really changes it when you're able to have these open communications, when you're able to start to understand what is at play, and also when you can forego self-judgment or criticism about having it. Or your partner, if your partner is jealous, maybe we can be a little bit more compassionate and understanding and see what we can do to help them come to terms with it.
Yeah, I think jealousy is one thing that people commonly ask me about. Like, aren't you jealous if he's out with people? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I am. It's okay. Like, I don't think you have to have 100% compersion. It's something we always talk about, and it's in both of our programs, is like how to, that it's not a perfect thing. You don't have to be free of jealousy, but it's like you said, is understanding how to talk about it and deal with it and that sort of thing. But you had said something else about, and I forgot it. It was anyway.
Okay. Can you just tell us very briefly what compersion means?
Compersion is having joy, a pleasure from another person's pleasure. So in polyamory, non-monogamy, it's that you are happy for your partner's happiness, essentially. So and you're not jealous. Like some people say it's the opposite of jealousy. I don't think that's the case. I think it's feeling complete joy that you're having joy. So you're out, you meet someone fantastic, you're having a great time, you have a great relationship, and I'm 100% awesome about that.
Wow.
That's compersion, I think. And I think it's okay not to feel that all the time. Yeah.
It's so interesting, right? Because before I was as well versed or as experienced in E&M relationships, I might have found that too fantastic to imagine that I was going to get pleasure by you're going out with somebody else. But I think there really does come this point where I feel as though you're with me when you want to be with me, and I accept that. But then that I also have this new perspective that says, well, I'm not the only destination on the map. There might be other places that you're going to want to go, and I'm happy for you to go to them. You are a social butterfly like myself. We go from flower to flower, and it doesn't mean that I'm not still one of your favorite flowers. It means that you are living your life in an open and ethical way, and as am I, and we can both go up but come together again should we choose. And I think that's really beautiful, and for me that's a big part of the that compassion that we might have, that appreciation that the other person was having pleasure because we feel pleasure in their pleasure.
Yeah, I remember the thing that I was thinking of when you were talking, which is about judgment and how we might if we are feeling jealousy and we think, oh, we're supposed to not feel jealousy, that we layer on top of that judgment on of ourselves is like, oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible partner. I shouldn't feel jealous and that sort of thing. It's like, why have that, add that to the things that you're going through?
Not only should we, what's the benefit of adding that, but it might then take us away from the actual situation and what was originally causing it. Now we're simply going away from that, looking at ourselves as not being enough or being too much of something that we don't want, and not really addressing the issue at hand.
One of the things that's also surprised me over the 6 years, and something that I've grown to love, is seeing your pleasure. So if we're in a situation where we're with others and I'm there present, is enjoying seeing you pleasuring others and getting pleasure yourself. And how, I mean, I think if you'd asked me that when we first opened up, I would say like, hells to the no. I would not think that was cool. But now I actually quite enjoy it. And, you know, sometimes we have these little moments where we look at each other and we're like, yeah.
No, it's interesting you said, because I heard your enjoyment yesterday or the day before, and there was no element of jealousy. In fact, it was just like, oh, that's wonderful. Like, you know, she's having a good time, apparently, obviously. And in the beginning, I would have thought, oh my God, like, you know, are they doing it better than I am? Or is like, you know, was it sufficient with me? It would have pointed back to me somehow, as though it was about my not having enough, or that you're getting pleasure in somebody else. Maybe you wouldn't want to come back to my pleasures. And that's not at all the case. And we come to find that out. But there is also another point, which we were talking about earlier. What happens when and if people catch feelings for each other?
Oh yeah, that was one of the questions that came up for someone. So we might as well just jump into that.
Let's do that.
Is you know, they had expressed that they were starting to have really strong feelings for somebody and fall in love with somebody, and more so than what they called their original partner or their primary partner. I guess they opened up an existing relationship. And what do they do in that situation?
Yeah, and it's a very real possibility. And it is, I think, something that often people are not wanting to necessarily directly address, right? Because what might happen if that plays out? So you and I decide, okay, let's see about what, you know, this might be like if we were to open up, and all of a sudden one of us catches feelings, and how are we going to announce it? What are we going to do with those things? Yeah, it's a real thing.
So what do when you begin to like a partner more than your original partner? So,
well, I think whether you are in a monogamous relationship or an open relationship, I think it always comes back to the same thing. And that is, number one, trying to sit quietly with yourself and reflect on what is going on, or speak to another person, but that we would look introspectively and figure out what's going on. So I meet this new person, they're fantastic, and wow, like I've never met anybody else like them. That may all be true, but is it really being influenced by
NRE?
NRE, NRE, so many abbreviations in there. But is it new relationship energy? Am I simply in this honeymoon phase where they seem as though they are, in many ways, the perfect stranger, right? I'm able to cast all of my fantasies on them. Or maybe they are the life partner I've always been waiting for. Maybe they are my soulmate, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, we would want to look introspectively and see if we can be as honest as possible as to what is prompting these feelings, what is coming up, how is it any way different, what is our motive? Are things maybe not so fantastic in the other department, and this would be a way of imagining that things are going to be so much better over there. But once we've come to these good questions, we've gained the data, we've gained some insight, then we would hopefully be willing and able to communicate them. It's all about communication, right? So I'm starting to catch feelings for this person. I didn't think I would. It makes me feel this, that, and the other thing, and I want to know how you feel about it, but I want you to know how I feel about it. And it's always about communication, that we should be open with this. Again, whether it's a closed relationship or an open relationship, we should be able to announce to our friends and partners how we're feeling, and let them also have an informed decision as to where they're wanting to go with it.
I wanted to jump back on the thing where you talked about them being a perfect stranger. Just using my own personal circumstance, when I was married and met somebody at work that seemed like the perfect stranger. Like on the surface, it was exciting. They were new. You know, I saw a certain version of them and fell in love with that version of them. And it ended up having an affair, broke up my marriage, all those things, only to find out that that person was not as I had envisioned. Not to say that that's necessarily going to happen. They could be all you wanted and more. But sometimes you're not seeing the whole picture. Just like when you meet someone new and they seem amazing, sometimes we don't see the faults until we're with them for a longer period of time, or we ignore those things. And I think what happens in sometimes when people first open up a relationship and they meet someone new, if they're, say, for example, they're opening a relationship and they're married and have kids and responsibilities at home, when they're with that other person, they can be a different version of themselves. That's not mom, wife, keeper of the house, whatever, if it, or dad, keeper of the house, you know what I mean? Yeah, sure. So it seems like the perfect situation. So I think that's sometimes what happens. And that's why what you said in terms of reflection is super important.
Yeah. But we become aware that, maybe we are projecting all those things, but then at the same time, maybe that is, in fact, the best thing. Maybe it is good for our relationship if we do have somebody else that doesn't have all these considerations, and we can afford ourselves a recess or a timeout and go to this person, go on these dates and think like, I don't have to worry about the dirty dishes. I don't have to worry about the diapers. I don't have to worry about all that other stuff. I can just go out and have that as well. But again, it comes back to the self-awareness. What is prompting me? What is motivating me? So it's, am I going at it with any kind of ulterior motive, or am I doing it free of heart and in an open, loving way?
Yeah. And some of it can be too monogamous mindset, right? So some of that coming into play, that you have to choose and one person has to be the most important. And that's why I put up this this quote from, I said, I love all my partners, right? So, and you can love all your partners. That's the beauty of being polyamorous.
It's interesting because thinking about, like, are we swingers? Are we relationship anarchists? Are we whatever it might be? Are we polyamorous? And at this event, there was a friend of ours that was supposed to come there, and then some unfortunate circumstances prevented her from being able to come. And sexually, it meant, well, we're not going to interact with her, right? We're not going to physically see her. But emotionally, it really made me realize how much I love them, because I know about their family. I know about what's going on with them. And even though it's unfortunate, it enriches my life having them in my life. And it really makes me feel polyamorous in that loving way. Yeah. Interesting.
It's awesome. Well, and even the friends that we saw on the weekend, in for all intents and purposes, it was a play party, right? But it wasn't just, those aren't people that we just see sexually. I think most of those people, if not all of them, we're actually, especially the hosts, we are like super amazing friends now and love them in more than just sexual partners. They're important part of our life. And so, that's one of the beauties, I think, and something that I love about being polyamorous.
But that is only one possibility, because there are people who say, well, I'm not wanting or can't afford at this time to have those type of relationships, and I prefer to just keep them primarily physical, and that is perfectly okay too.
Yeah. And some people don't want to, don't like that couple, for example, they do not see other people separately and they can't imagine it. And so did we had this whole conversation, and so did many of the people there. I think most, if not all of them, are just doing things together. We were probably the oddballs in the group, I think.
Well, because we date separately as well.
Yeah.
Well, we're all over the place.
Okay. So someone had asked what was the key to our success over the past 6 years. And so someone in the comments could probably say what that is, because we talk about it all the time.
Does it start with a C?
C. And a C and a C.
Yeah.
Communication.
It seems rather obvious in some ways, I guess. And everybody says, well, of course, we all communicate. We all announce our feelings. But do we really do it well? And it's kind of like the communication attunement, right? Are we listening to understand? Or are we simply wanting to get our own point across, hoping that it's going to land? So are we actually very good communicators, or do we just assume that we are?
Sometimes we're not good communicators.
Sometimes we're not. No.
But I think what's different for me is that we tend to recognize when we're not being good communicators, or at least one of us will recognize it and point it out to the other. It's like, hey, let's take a break, or hey, maybe we could, shift the way we're speaking to each other, and then reset. I think you're better at doing that.
Yeah, but
I'm the one who gets a bit more heated.
But you had told me something the other day, and I made no acknowledgement of it. And then when it didn't happen, you said, well, I told you the other day. And I was well aware that I wasn't listening. But were you aware that I wasn't listening?
No. I don't know, what was that?
Well, you know,
I'm trying to remember.
But how one of the ways, and this is kind of basic, but one of the ways that we do invite ourselves to that is by reiterating what the person said. So, for example, high level, we say, could you put my stuff in the microwave? Could you warm up my lunch for me? I don't hear it. You assume I heard it. You said it. And I go about doing my thing. Your lunch is not heated up in the microwave. And it's like, well, I asked you to heat up my lunch. You did. But did I ever acknowledge it? So I might say something, well, Tara, what I heard from you is you would like me to heat up your lunch in the microwave. Some acknowledgement that I got it. So
are you hungry?
Are you doing a very good job as a communicator as well? How do I know that what I'm being said is landing, that it is being observed, that it's being recognized? And am I able to do the same with them? Am I simply listening for them to shut up so I can put my point across again? Or did I actually listen to hear them and then be able to actively participate in it? But again, that all comes down to communication. So the principles of those things may seem a little bit awkward in the beginning to do it that way, but in time, with practice, you will begin to participate and speak in those terms as well. So then you're really listening to understand, and you're much more present in the conversations.
Yeah. I think the other C is consideration. I think we tend to have a lot more consideration. That's part of our values-based agreement, is consideration. So one of the other questions was an interesting question, which was, how successful are FFM, so female, female, male, polyamorous relationships between older men and younger women? Very specific question. 2 females and a male. So usually older men, usually when it's written FFM, it means that the female is common to the 2. So it means that everybody's interacting, basically.
I'm not so sure about that.
Not so sure? No, sometimes the outside ones don't. Okay.
Don't interact with each other. The person in the middle is the common. The V in that. Right?
Yeah. So that was a question that came up. And I think the simplest answer is, like any relationship, it depends. It can be successful or it might not be, depending on a number of factors. So number of factors come into play. So in this sort of situation, it's female, female, male, and older, younger women. So I think is finding a common interest in that situation. So I think it might be, it could be a trickier combination to put together in the first place, but also be successful, because you have to find people who are wanting that. If it's an older man and it's 2 younger women who are willing to be in that situation, want to be in that situation. And then everybody getting along, like in any relationship. So there's 2, there's 3. As you increase the numbers of people, I think you increase the probability of it having more factors to deal with. Oh, someone's asking, maybe it's the same person. Is FMF a different situation? Yes, I would say.
Really? How so?
FMF?
Yeah.
Well, that means the male is the common to the 2 and has a relationship with the 2 women, and the 2 women on the outside don't necessarily have a relationship, potentially.
They could or they couldn't.
They could or they couldn't.
Right. But how would it be any different if you put an F or an M or a T or an R or whatever? How does it change the dynamics of that?
Well, just like you said at the beginning, if it's FFM, the female in the middle is the common denominator.
Well, on any of those, whatever letter you put, the middle one is usually the one that is going to be anchored to those 2, right? Or it's going to be the hinge to those 2.
Yeah.
The outside ones may or may not
interact.
Right?
Yeah, so that's the difference.
Right. But how would it be different? Is it different to gender? How we present ourselves? Does that change the dynamics? Would it be different with an FFF?
No. I mean, no, I think it's the same factor. It depends on the people, right? Yeah. I think it's the putting the male and like the person, whoever in the middle. The point is the way they're written, the person in the middle is the common denominator. So that's why they're saying, thanks for answering my question.
So for me, really, the thing is, it doesn't matter which letters I put in those in that order of mix up there. It's really, again, about the communication.
Mm-hmm.
What are you wanting out of this? What would you like to do? What would you not like to do? Do you want to interact with those two end partners? Do you prefer not to? Are you here for
the two end partners wanting to interact with
each other? Right. So can we speak openly about this? What is your motive for wanting to be in this? Is it curiosity? Are you wanting a deep, ongoing emotional connection? Is it sex only? Do you want some type of emotional or financial compensation? Do you want, what is at play? Could we talk about all these things? Could we feel as though it's okay to announce our position? Could we normalize it and just say it as it is? So I would like to be part of this. I'd like it ongoing. I don't want a high level emotional connection. I feel as though I want to be whatever it might be. But the question is really, how are we going to announce what we're wanting and not wanting? And it comes down to being comfortable with participating in communication.
Yeah. And then consent, the other C.
Yeah. And consideration.
So communicating what it is you want, and then everybody consenting to that situation, and not making any assumptions about it, right?
Right. No C for coercion.
No coercion. No. I don't think that's a suggestion, but you can.
No, but you never know.
You never know. That's
so. You and I are in a close relationship, and you're like, I'd really like another guy to join us, or another woman to join us, or another whoever to join us, and I'm kind of like so about it, and you're like, well, it would be beneficial, or whatever, however you do it, and I might kind of do it under duress, but not necessarily of my own desire. And how does that come into it? And I remember in the beginning that seemed I guess because we're more into threesomes at the moment, it was brought up with other people we're meeting that they would very often want to have female presenting meet with other female presenting to find out that they were in fact wanting to go about this of their own free will.
Yeah, because sometimes people aren't sure. And that's the thing. And I think I hear this comment. I've talked to a lot of people in the group. We've had calls, and sometimes a situation arises where the person said, I want my partner to be happy. And so I'm doing this because I want them to be happy, but I hate it. It's not something I want. It's not something I would choose. So then it's like, what do you do in that situation? Especially if you're opening an existing relationship. I mean, there are things that can be worked through, most definitely. And that's why we have our program, our deeper dive program. But, is this something I want? What can I agree to? Do I want to agree to it? It's super important.
Yeah, because you might want to participate in something out of consideration for your partner, and that's fine to a great extent. But if you're doing it and you're not really feeling it, is that going to be the bedrock for your resentments? And where will those resentments find their way out? It's not necessarily the healthiest of relationships. Yeah, agreeing to something that you ultimately really don't want is not going to help your situation in the end. Right, and it's not going to save your marriage or relationship. It's not going to save your marriage. In fact, it could, drive a wedge between it. Oh, yeah, for sure. Build resentment, all those things, like you said. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't think there was any other questions. Well, there's always more questions, but not for this. Not for this time. Yeah. So just a reminder that our Poly Newbies course starts next Monday. And so there's the link there. We'll drop it here in the chat as well. It's also in our group, or if you're watching on YouTube, it's probably in the bio information. But this is our all-in-one online course for people who are new to polyamory and want to start off on the right foot. And avoid some of the common newbie mistakes. The first module, which we're doing next week, is a bit of a 101. So we're doing definitions, and then talking about what makes me want to be open or polyamorous, which is a great one if it's something that you're considering. So join us for Poly Newbies, and join us here again for Mondays with Tara and André next week. We'll still be here next week, but we'll also be starting our course as well. Yeah, fun. Awesome. Thanks for the chat today. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye. Bye.